Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are for educative purpose. They are mainly for your theory exams, oral exam. They will be very helpful to fourth year student. Also, some of the lectures may be helpful to your first year, second year, third year also. Today we are going to talk on one of the very useful topic, that is blood pressure. What is blood pressure? What are the factors which affects the blood pressure? How you measure the blood pressure, etc. Practical aspect of it. Blood pressure is one of the very important vital sign. So you do measure this blood pressure as a vital sign almost in all individuals. There are a lot of different types of instruments which are available. Say this is mercury, this is digital, this is ambulatory. So there are a lot of different types of instruments which measure the blood pressure. But accurate measurement of a blood pressure is very important. So while you are measuring a blood pressure, your technique should be good so that you get almost, we say, negligible error. Ideally that should be no error. So what is blood pressure? It is the amount of lateral thrust, or we call pressure, exerted on an arterial wall during ventricular systole and diastole due to blood flow in artery. So whatever pressure is being exerted on an arterial wall because of a systole or diastole, which produces the flow of a blood, and that flow of a blood produces a lateral thrust, or we call pressure, on an arterial wall. During ventricular systole, the pressure created, we call that as systolic blood pressure, and during diastole we call diastolic blood pressure. So when ventricle contracts, the amount of thrust created on an arterial wall will be systolic, and during a diastolic period of ventricle, that is relaxation of ventricle, the pressure created on an arterial wall because of the flow of a blood, we call that as a diastolic blood pressure. So same thing is mentioned here. So arterial pressure expressed in a 4 different terms. I already mentioned systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, and when you get the difference between systolic and diastolic, we call that as a pulse pressure. So pulse pressure is a difference between systolic and diastolic. Roughly the pulse pressure is nearly more than 50. If systolic pressure is low and diastolic pressure is high, the pulse pressure will be narrow. So pulse pressure will be narrow in few conditions. We'll be talking further. And there will be a wide pulse pressure in certain conditions. Say one simple example, in aortic regurgitation, you will have a wide pulse pressure, and in case of aortic stenosis, you will have a narrow pulse pressure. There is another term we call as a mean arterial pressure. Mean arterial pressure is systolic plus 2 times diastolic divided by 3, or we call 1/3 systolic blood pressure plus 2/3 diastolic blood pressure. Roughly it is between 80 to 100. So it gives you an idea regarding the amount of pressure, mean arterial pressure created in an artery. Now there are good number of factors which will increase the blood pressure, and there will be some factors which will decrease the blood pressure. Like factor which increase the blood pressure, like talking, cold temperature, ethanol, smoking, arm below the heart, small cough, etc. While opposite of that, if the cuff is too large for that particular arm, You keep the arm above the heart. Diastolic lowers when the person is in a supine posture, and there are certain bias reading which will also keep rise to decrease in blood pressure. There are some physiological factors which can also alter your blood pressure, like age. There is a different blood pressure during a younger age group, in a newborn, in a children, and in the old age group. Exercise will increase the blood pressure. Any mental stress, physical stress will also increase the blood pressure. Race, depending upon the typical race, there may be little elevated blood pressure. Male will have a little higher blood pressure as compared to female. Certain medication can also increase the blood pressure, and certain medication can decrease your blood pressure. Obesity will always have a little elevated blood pressure as compared to a thin built individual. Blood pressure during early morning and during a daytime, it will be higher, and in a night it will be always less. A sick person will always have a little low blood pressure. During sleep, the blood pressure will be little less as compared to when the person is awake. Depending upon the blood pressure record, I am not going into detail at present. We classify them into a normal blood pressure, pre-hypertensive, stage 1 and stage 2 hypertensive. We'll be discussing when we discuss a topic on hypertension. So these are the 4 categories which are being classified at present, and this is the latest thing what has been established in all the different types of what we called as criterias. That is, all the different association, JNC8, etc., puts this particular classification of blood pressure. Now we have got all the recent guidelines which suggest that this should be the criteria for different definitions of labeling a person as normal or pre-hypertensive or stage 1 hypertension or stage 2 hypertension. Different terminology which are being utilized. So male are always having a little higher blood pressure as compared to female. Elderly will be having a higher as compared to children because of atherosclerosis. We have already told you that any anxiety will increase the blood pressure because of secretion of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Exercise will increase the blood pressure because there will be increased venous return, and because of increased venous return, cardiac output will increase, and that will elevate your blood pressure. Certain hormones like adrenaline, noradrenaline and thyroid hormone we call as a stress hormone. So any stress will increase the blood pressure. Blood pressure in supine posture will be little higher as compared to erect posture, and also blood pressure in lower limb will be little higher as compared to upper limb. Race wise, they said oriental people will have a higher blood pressure as compared to western. That will depend upon the dietary factor, weathers, body structures, etc. During deep sleep, the venous return is reduced, hence the blood pressure is lower. In pregnancy, because of increased metabolism and increased blood volume, there will be little elevation of blood pressure. Hot water and cold bath will also alter the blood pressure, because during hot water bath or hot shower or steam bath, there is a vasodilatation which will produce fall of blood pressure, and cold water will produce vasoconstriction which will elevate the blood pressure. Smoking will produce little change in blood pressure. Alcohol will produce vasodilatation. Tea, coffee will stimulate. Cocaine will also stimulate. There will be certain drugs which can elevate or fluctuate. Say diuretic will reduce your blood pressure. And there is also a diurnal variation, means in early morning you can have an early morning surge, and then during a daytime there will be elevated blood pressure, and during night, that is during sleep, there will be fall of blood pressure. Now these are different types of sphygmomanometer. This is mercury, this is digital, these are digital, these are digital, this is aneroid, these two are aneroid, and this is mercury thermometer on a stand. This is a portable, and this is containing a glass tube, and here will be mercury chamber. So that will be what we called as mercury thermometers. This is called cuff, and this particular portion is called bladder, where the cuff is being placed. Sphygmomanometer, this is the size of the cuff. This size should cover up at least 2/3 of the arm circumference. This will control the flow of air, means pressure control bulb, and this will show you how much pressure is there in a bladder. This particular rubber part is called bladder. You can have an aneroid, you can have a mercury, you can have a digital thermometers. There are also some blood pressure instruments which are digital, which you can take at wrist. They are called wrist sphygmomanometers. This sphygmomanometer can be utilized for, main use is for recording of a blood pressure. And while recording a blood pressure, you can detect pulsus paradoxus. I'm not going into detail. When we talk on different types of pulse, we'll be talking what is pulsus paradoxus, what is water hammer pulse, what is pulsus alterans. So these three can be detected by a sphygmomanometer when you are recording a blood pressure. You can utilize sphygmomanometer by creating a pressure in a Hayes test. This is for during bleeding time. You can also demonstrate Troisier sign in a latent tetany. While drawing a blood, usually for laboratory investigation or during a phlebotomy, a blood donor, that time also you can utilize a BP cuff and you can take the advantage of that sphygmomanometer. And during surgery, you can utilize as a tourniquet. Also, there is one of the treatment of what we call as in a left ventricular failure. You can utilize as a tourniquet treatment in a left ventricular failure. And for diagnosis of tetany, you can utilize the sphygmomanometer by demonstrating the Troisier sign, and you can utilize that as a tourniquet test. There are two methods of measuring a blood pressure. One we call as a direct method, or we call invasive method, where you put the catheter in the artery and you measure the central blood pressure. Depending upon where you are putting that catheter, or we call, if catheter is put on the right side, you will be measuring a pressure in the right atrium, right ventricle and pulmonary artery. And when you measure in a pulmonary artery, we call it a pulmonary arterial blood pressure. And when you do a left heart catheterization, you are going to measure the left atrial pressure, left ventricular pressure, aortic pressure. So this is what we call as an invasive technique. While when you measure by using a sphygmomanometer, it is called as an indirect technique or non-invasive technique, in which we use three methods. One we call palpatory method, second we call oscillation, and third we call auscultatory. Auscultatory is the only accurate method, while palpatory method is while you inflate the bulb or you inflate the cuff, and when you are deflating, the stage when you just feel the pulse is called systolic, and when you feel complete full volume pulse, that will be diastolic blood pressure. Roughly, this is not an accurate method, hence it should not be utilized for a record purpose. But before doing an auscultatory, you can utilize a palpatory method as a guideline. There is another method we call as an oscillation. When you elevate the pressure in a cuff above a systolic blood pressure, the oscillation of a mercury column or oscillation of a aneroid will stop. As you start deflating, this pointer will start oscillating, or the top level of a mercury column will start oscillating as soon as you deflate the cuff close to systolic pressure, and as you come to a diastolic pressure, the oscillation will stop. Again, this is not an accurate method, can be utilized to support auscultatory method. During auscultation, you get a sound will just start as soon as you come close to systolic blood pressure, and sound will get muffled when you go below diastolic blood pressure. Sound will stop. These sounds are called Korotkoff sounds. When we take the blood pressure with manual or automatic blood pressure cuff, you will get a recording. In case of an automatic blood pressure, a record will be seen on a screen, and that will be in a digital. But digital being an electronic instrument, there is always a chance of error. So do not rely 100% on a digital. Always cross check with a mercury or an aneroid BP instrument whenever in doubt. So these are the three different types of instrument which are commonly being utilized for blood pressure record. We call mercury, aneroid, and digital instruments. And three techniques: palpatory method, oscillatory method, and auscultatory method. By and large, this direct invasive technique is mainly done during right heart catheterization or left heart catheterization in case of cardiovascular disorders. These are the different types of what we call as a direct methods. These are mainly for experimental purpose, done mainly in research departments. This is water manometers. These are electronic manometers. These are mainly for diagnostic and what we call as a research purpose. Invasive method. I have already told you that in a non-invasive method, palpatory method, auscultatory method, oscillation, out of which only auscultatory method is the most accurate. There are other type of instruments which are very accurate, but they are expensive. We call oscillometric instruments, which can give you lot of accuracy. Then there is another technique we can utilize is a Doppler. In place of auscultation, you can use a Doppler for finding out systolic as well as diastolic. It makes more accurate. There is another technology called plethysmography, but these are all for research purpose and certain disease where you can utilize, particularly in a case of a peripheral arterial disease. There is another technique called as a tonometry. These are all for research purpose and in a selective conditions. This is Doppler technique. Instead of a stethoscope, you are using a Doppler to find out a systolic as well as diastolic blood pressure. This is palpatory method. When you inflate and deflate, by palpation you find out when the pulse just starts filling and when the pulse is of a full volume. That is called palpatory method. And during auscultatory method, you auscultate for Korotkoff sounds to find out the systolic and diastolic blood pressure. This is oscillometry instruments which gives you a reading, multiple readings it takes, and it gives you an average, and it will give you lot of different parameters also. This is plethysmography. You can utilize in a different segments to find out a peripheral arterial disease also. This is tonometry type of instruments. These are all for research purpose, and these are sophisticated instruments. By and large, we utilize a mercury thermometer or aneroid, or we utilize a digital. These are wrist watch like, which can give you blood pressure and heart rate also. These are all different types of digital. This is again a wrist which can measure a blood pressure and pulse. But these are all electronic instruments. There is always a chance of error. So you should counter check in between at a regular interval to manipulate, or to what we call as to see the accuracy of the instrument. You should compare with a mercury instrument. These are all digital, different types of. This is a monitor which can give you a pulse and blood pressure record. Even when you put a catheter in the artery, it can give you a mean arterial pressure also, along with ECG records. This is mercury sphygmomanometer. This is oscillometry, wrist BP monitor. This is aneroid. This is a digital instrument. These are all digital instruments. This is ambulatory blood pressure monitor, which can give you a 24 hours blood pressure recordings. This is another type of instrument where there is a modification. This BP cuff remains the same, but this is connected to a electronic device which will give you a direct reading in your phone. These are very accurate but costly. Now we go to the different terminology. I've already mentioned auscultatory method we are doing by Korotkov sounds. Different types of instrument: mercury, digital, aneroid, and oscillometry. Technology wise, we use a technique that is auscultatory, oscillatory, and palpatory, of which the auscultatory is the most accurate. In a digital instrument, we don't have to do any auscultation. Only while using a mercury or aneroid we do auscultation. In a digital, directly it gives you a reading. In oscillometry, it will give you a reading of average. There will be multiple reading, and there will be other readings like mean arterial pressure, etc. Now, if you take ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, it is called ABPM, ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. When you measure the blood pressure at home, we call it as a home blood pressure monitoring. Now this is very important, because this will be very helpful to find out what we call as white coat hypertension and mask hypertension. We'll be discussing in detail in person when we discuss a chapter on hypertension. While taking a blood pressure, you can take a blood pressure in a upper extremity or lower extremity, or you can take a blood pressure one after other and compare, because the blood pressure in lower extremity is always higher than upper extremity, and there is the importance of measuring the difference between the two. We'll be talking in one of the slides. You can measure the blood pressure in upper extremity at wrist or above the elbow by tying a BP cuff above the elbow, and in a lower extremity in a thigh or at the ankle. When you measure the blood pressure at ankle and compare with the brachial, we call ankle brachial index. You can have an instrument which can measure the blood pressure by putting that instrument over the finger or by putting over the lower limb. These are all the different technology by which you can measure the blood pressure. While measuring a blood pressure and comparing the difference between upper and lower extremity, you can demonstrate Hill's sign and Mann's sign. That we'll be discussing in a chapter of blood pressure, hypertension. So, when you measure the blood pressure in a clinic or in the office, we call office blood pressure monitor. When you measure at home, we call also home blood pressure monitoring, or we call self, person is measuring self. So it is a self blood pressure monitoring. And when you measure ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, it is called ABPM. And when you compare the two, both ambulatory office blood pressure monitoring, then it is called AOBPM, ambulatory office blood pressure monitoring. Then you can measure the blood pressure in supine posture. This is right upper extremity, left upper extremity, compare in both. Then you can measure the blood pressure ambulatory ABI, ankle brachial index, lower limb. You can measure in supine posture. You can measure the blood pressure in sitting posture, and you can see the difference between the two. You can measure in erect posture also. And these are the different instruments by which this is calibrating the two instruments. Always mercury instruments is more accurate, there is a chance of error is minimum. So always try to calibrate your instrument at a regular interval to minimize the error. Now, how exactly you measure the blood pressure and what are the precautions you take? There are different steps we'll be going through. This is very, very important, because when you come to internship, or even at this stage also, when you are measuring a blood pressure in your family, you should not create an error. First, prepare the patient. What is that preparation of the patient? Ideally, either in a supine posture, person should be well relaxed, and before that there are certain technique which you should keep it in mind. That is, room should be quiet, comfortable temperature. Person should not have smoking at least half an hour before the measurements. No exercise, no tea, coffee, no anxiety before 30 minutes of measurements. Bladder should be completely empty, and then you should take the blood pressure record. Now, while taking a blood pressure record in a sitting posture, person should sit straight with back supported on a chair. We forget this particular part very, very frequently. While taking a blood pressure, don't talk during you are taking a blood pressure, because this can alter your blood pressure. If a person is talking, the blood pressure record will be little higher. And when you are taking a blood pressure recording, at least take 3 readings at 1 minute or 2 minutes interval, and take the average. Take the average of last 2 measurements. The size of the cuff should be adequate, meaning it should cover the 2/3 of the arm circumference. Whenever you are using an instrument, it should be a validated electronic instrument. It should be calibrated at a regular interval along with auscultatory device like mercury instrument or aneroid instrument. Arm should be bare. There should be no clothes in between, and should be resting on the table with the mid arm at the heart level. This particular should be at the heart level. Feet should be uncrossed and flat on the floor. This is also forgotten good number of times. And always after finishing the reading, take the average of last 2 measurements. And if you still find doubtful, use the other instrument and take the blood pressure with other instrument, or compare with mercury or compare with aneroid if you are using a digital sphygmomanometer. And then depending upon the blood pressure record, we put them into either of these 4 groups: normal or pre-hypertensive, grade 1, grade 2 hypertensive. So these are some of the precautions which you should take while taking a blood pressure. This is a very important Very important while taking a blood pressure, because a person who is normotensive, we can make them hypertensive by taking a blood pressure record. By taking a blood pressure record, or sometime a person who is hypertensive, he will be recorded as normotensive or hypotensive. If instrument is not proper, BP cuff is not proper, the bladder of a BP cuff is not proper. So this is a part of repetition. At least 30 minutes prior to measurements, no coffee, no tea, no tobacco, that is smoking. After coming to the clinic, person should relax for 5 minutes in a quiet room. There should be no clothings in between your BP cuff and the arm. Arm should be completely bare. There should be no cut downs, no lymphedema. So don't measure the blood pressure in the arm which is having a plaster, or which is having a lymphatic edema, or where there is an injury. Place the distal edge of the sphygmomanometer 1.5 centimeter proximal to the brachial pulse. That is, the BP cuff should be at least minimum 2 finger above, 2 to 3 finger above the elbow. Use bell or diaphragm part of your stethoscope while auscultation. Palpate the brachial artery to make sure that it is present. Patient arm should be at the level of heart level. That is, the mid part of the arm should be at the heart level. Length of the BP pressure cuff bladder should be at least covering 2/3 of the arm circumference. Inflate the cuff to a pressure minimum 20 millimeter above the systolic, that is 20 millimeter above when the pulse is palpable. Pulse should disappear. Release the pressure cuff only by 2 millimeter in 1 second. Don't release it very fast. Obtain the reading at least 30 seconds to 2 minutes apart. By and large, we say that 1 to 2 minutes apart, and at least take minimum 3 readings. The readings should not differ by more than 5 millimeter in diastolic blood pressure, and always use the second and third reading and take the average of that. Do not take immediately after exercise. Best is supine posture, and if you want to compare supine and sitting, compare the two to find out orthostatic hypotension. Almost we have discussed all other this part. Yes, while auscultatory method, see that there is no other noise of fan or AC or other instrument which are there in that room. It should be absolutely quiet room. Make sure that you can see a sphygmomanometer properly. This is all we have discussed. Yes. Do not take the blood pressure in the arm where the mastectomy is done on that side. Recent blood drawn in that arm, or in a paralyzed arm, or if the IV is going on in that arm. This should be taken care. As far as possible, don't take in that arm where on the side of that side mastectomy is done in a in a female. If recently the blood is drawn or IV is going on, or if that limb is paralyzed. Blood pressure cannot be measured in either arm due to burns or trauma. Again, this should be avoided. Blood pressure in one thigh is to be compared with the blood pressure in the other thigh. This is to find out a peripheral arterial disease. Avoid having a blood pressure recording in an injured or the area with a cast. If a client has undergone a removal of the axillary lymph nodes, in that arm also it should be avoided. We already told you IV lines. And if a person has undergone a AV fistula for dialysis, also don't take a blood pressure in that limb. This we already told you that patient should abstain eating, smoking, drinking hot tea, coffee, etc. or even an injection at least 30 minutes prior to blood pressure recording. Bladder should be empty. Person should be well relaxed. Room should be quiet. It should be comfortable. Temperature wise it should be comfortable. Check both the pulse to rule out atherosclerotic obstruction, scalenus anticus syndrome, cervical rib, coarctation, anomalous origin of a right subclavian in case of a coarctation, aneurysm, thrombosis, any other cause of occlusion. For this particular, to rule out this condition, you should take a blood pressure initially in both the upper arm. But before taking a blood pressure in both the upper arm, you should compare the radial pulse in both the arm. If pulse is equal in both the arm, still you take a blood pressure in both the upper extremity. If they both are equal, all these are ruled out. But if in one arm it is different from other, opposite, always try to find out what is the possibility. So just going through this slide, we can say that if suppose a right subclavian, there is an atherosclerosis, in right upper limb the blood pressure will be low. If I've got a right side cervical rib, which is compressing my right subclavian, again my blood pressure in a right upper extremity will be low. Right side scalenus anticus syndrome, right upper limb. So take it for granted, if it is on the left side, left upper limb blood pressure will be low. If there is a coarctation before left subclavian, so in a left subclavian the blood pressure will be low, in right it will be higher. If a right subclavian is having an anomalous origin from coarctation, then also you will have an abnormal blood pressure in a right subclavian. If there is an aneurysm after right subclavian will have a normal blood pressure, and left side, left upper limb will have a low blood pressure. So any artery which is arising after atherosclerotic occlusion or after coarctation or after aneurysm will have a low blood pressure. So in an atherosclerotic obstruction because of external pressure like cervical rib, muscle, tendon, etc. in coarctation and in aneurysm, all this condition, post condition, there will be diminished blood flow. So in that particular part, the blood pressure will be diminished or low. While using an instrument, there are certain things you should be keeping in mind. We have already told you it should be properly calibrated at a regular interval. Accurate measuring of a blood pressure is very, very important. We have already mentioned avoid smoking, tea, coffee, exercise within 30 minutes before measurements. Empty the bladder, sit quietly for at least 5 minutes before measurements. Room should be quiet. Optimum temperature should be maintained in the room. There should be no sound. Support the limb. BP cuff should be at the heart level. Correct BP cuff size. Do not take the measurements over the clothes. Measure in both the upper arm and use the higher reading. At least take 2 to 3 measurements. We say always 3 measurements, and last 2 measurements should be utilized, and at least between the 2 measurements the interval should be 1 to 2 minutes. self monitoring can be done, and it is very useful to find out some of the conditions. So office blood pressure monitoring and self monitoring at home, we call home blood pressure monitoring. And when the person is ambulatory, continuous monitoring is taken over the 24 to 48 hours, we call as a ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. This too will help to find out good number of conditions like early morning surge, BP fluctuation during day and night, we call diurnal variation. It will also help to find out white coat hypertension, because the person will be hypertensive when we go to the office, and at home the blood pressure record will be normal. We label that as white coat hypertension. And if the person, when he goes to the clinic or to the office, and office blood pressure monitoring is normal, and at home the blood pressure record is high, that is very frequently early morning blood pressure record will be high, that is called mask hypertension. So these two can be detected, and also you will be able to find out the fluctuation during day and night, and that can give you one of the condition we normally don't utilize that word, we call labile hypertension, where there is a wide fluctuation in a blood pressure during day and night. So all those can be identified by office blood pressure and home blood pressure monitoring or ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. These are, now we are going little fast. While taking a blood pressure, first feel for the brachial artery, confirm that brachial artery is palpable. You can utilize aneroid BP instrument or a mercury instrument or a digital instruments. Clothes should be out. BP cup should be of adequate size, and it should cover 2/3 of the arm circumference. It should be at least minimum 2.5 centimeter above the brachial artery. This distance should be at least 2.5 centimeter, or we call 2 to 3 finger above the cubital fossa. You should palpate for radial artery, initially in palpatory method, or you can utilize even a brachial artery in a palpatory method. While doing auscultation, you can utilize a brachial artery for Korotkov sounds. This is bladder, this is bladder, and this is called cuff. This is called cuff. This is brachial artery, and this distance should be so much that it should cover at least 2/3 of the arm circumference. It should be at least 2.5 centimeter above the cubital fossa. The BP cuff, when you tie, it should not be too tight or too loose. And these two tubes should be over, these two tubes should be over brachial. Palpate for brachial artery. You roughly judge what is systolic and what is diastolic, and then you can take with auscultatory method. Then utilize the auscultatory method, and at least have 2 to 3 readings at the interval of 2 minutes. After taking all precautions, take the average. Take the average. This is systolic, this is diastolic. And then make the record. These are Korotkov sounds which you will be able to auscultate phase 1 to phase 5. Phase 1 is systolic, phase 5 is diastolic. When completely disappears, we call diastolic. When it just starts, systolic. You can utilize that Korotkov sounds, and it is the best technique. There are some error as far as the sphygmomanometer is concerned, poor maintenance, BP cuff is not of adequate size, or there are damage to BP cuff. Either bladder size is over or small, it is too big or too small, and if there is a leakage in a tube or in a pump. If the person is excessively obese, the cuff becomes a small size, and if person is absolutely thin built individual, again it will be oversized. If the person is having arrhythmia, if the arm position is not proper, and the person who is taking a blood pressure record, his technique is poor, his bias, terminal digital preference will make lot of difference. If you lower BP cuff very fast and distance between the two scale is more, then also it gives you a false reading. There are good number of factors which affects the blood pressure. We already mentioned before: age, gender, race, temperature, pain, emotion, alcohol, smoking, exercise, obesity, etc. All these factors should be considered before labeling a person as hypertensive or hypotensive. We already mentioned before, there will be false low if cuff is too big, too much pressure with a stethoscope head, rapid cuff deflation. And opposite of that, you will record a false high if the cuff size is narrow, anxiety, pain, tobacco, exertion, if the arm is not supported, and you slow cuff inflation, then also it can make a little difference. Alternative sites you can measure in the thigh region. This is usually taken to compare the upper limb with lower limb, and that is very useful in some of the condition. Say in a coarctation, aneurysm, atherosclerosis, Takayusu, in all these conditions, comparing upper limb with lower limb is very important. Normally in lower limb the blood pressure is higher as compared to upper limb. The difference is 5 to 10 millimeter of mercury. If in lower limb the blood pressure is much higher, more than 20 millimeter of mercury difference between the upper limb and lower limb, we call that as a Hill's sign. Again, in Hill's sign we divide into mild, moderate and severe. We'll be discussing in a chapter of aortic regurgitation. If there's a difference, it's 20 millimeter between the two limbs, that lower limb is 20 millimeter higher as compared to upper limb, we call as a mild. More than 40 millimeter, moderate. More than 60 millimeter, severe aortic regurgitation. If blood pressure in lower limb is less as compared to or lower than upper limb, it will be in a thoracic coarctation or arch of aorta coarctation, or aneurysm in arch of aorta or thoracic or abdominal aortic aneurysm, or even you can have a severe atherosclerosis involving the common iliacs. If in a two upper limb there is a difference in blood pressure, in the lower limb when the blood pressure is low, it is a narrowing of the blood vessel in a common iliacs or at the bifurcation of aorta, either because of atherosclerosis or because of embolism, involving a unilateral common iliacs, or because of TAO, or we call Buerger's disease. This particular condition will have a low blood pressure in one extremity, and pulse in that extremity will be feeble or absent. These are some of the conditions which you will be able to identify. If in upper limb the blood pressure is markedly reduced and pulse are low volume as compared to lower limb, you can come across in case of a Takayusu disease, because Takayusu disease involves the upper part of the neck and upper limb blood vessels. This is cuffless blood pressure monitoring. Instruments are available. Always keep it in mind, these are electronic instruments, can give you a false reading or error. So always keep this thing in mind. This is what we call as a fingertip. This is wrist watch, which can give you reading. This is again a wrist BP monitoring. So you can monitor a blood pressure at wrist, at radial artery. But again, always keep in mind, this electronic instrument can give you an error. This is ankle brachial index. You are measuring a blood pressure at radial and at ankle, and you are comparing the two. So when you are comparing with, this is ankle and this is brachial, when you compare these two, this helps to find out the early atherosclerosis, and this is one of the method by which you can find out if the ratio becomes less than 0.9, it is in favor of atherosclerosis, early atherosclerosis. And it can also give you idea regarding a severity. If it is less than 0.9, it is 95% sensitive. But if it becomes between 0.5 to 0.84, person will invariably have a claudication. And when it goes below 0.5 ABI index, then it indicates advanced ischemia, or we call acute ischemic or critical limb. This is what I have already discussed, that blood pressure should be compared in upper limb and lower limb to rule out aortic regurgitation by Hill's sign. In coarctation, lower limb blood pressure will be less. In aneurysm, atherosclerosis and thromboembolism, these are the four conditions where the blood flow will be reduced after coarctation, after aneurysm, after atherosclerosis, or after thromboembolism segment. So in that particular portion, the blood pressure will be low or diminished. When you take the blood pressure in supine posture and in standing posture, you can find out what we call as a postural hypotension or orthostatic hypotension. If there is a difference between a erect posture and supine posture, in erect posture it will be low as compared to supine, and if the difference is more than 20 millimeter of mercury, it will be orthostatic hypotension or postural hypotension. If there is a marked difference between inspiration and expiration, that is we call the pulsus paradoxus. During a deep inspiration, the blood pressure will fall, and if it falls by more than 20 millimeter of mercury, we call that as a pulsus paradoxus. And we have already told you that if you take a blood pressure record by ambulatory blood pressure recording, you can find out a diurnal variation and marked fluctuation, which is very rarely seen, but may be seen in some of the patients, where there is a gross fluctuation during a day as well as night. You can find out a diurnal variation, early morning surge, a difference in a morning and evening blood pressure, etc. All those can be recorded. I've already discussed before. And we have told you that difference between upper limb and lower limb will help you, as well as difference between a right upper extremity and left upper extremity also will be very important in case of atherosclerosis, coarctation before the subclavian, aortic aneurysm, Takayusu, pressure effect on the subclavian by say tumor, mass, fracture clavicle, or even additional cervical rib, etc. So if there is a difference, normal person, usually there is not much amount of difference. But if there is a difference between upper limb and lower limb, more than 5 to 10 millimeter of mercury, if it is more than 20, we say straightforward Hill's sign. If lower limb blood pressure is less than upper limb, it will be very common in coarctation, aneurysm, embolism at bifurcation, TAO, occlusion of femoral artery by an embolus or by a thrombus or by external pressure, etc. This already we have discussed. So coarctation, abdominal aneurysm, thromboembolism, atherosclerosis, dissecting aneurysm of aorta, etc. So one more condition, dissecting aneurysm also you can find out. As a human being has evolved, there are newer technology also which are coming up. That is clinic blood pressure, home blood pressure monitoring, ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. They have come up, and this should be utilized. This is ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. This is clinic blood pressure monitoring, or we call office blood pressure monitoring, home blood pressure monitoring, and even there are advances in different instruments. Now there are instruments where you don't require a stethoscope. You have got an electronic instruments which can record, but always electronic instrument, there is always a chance of error, instrumental error. I already mentioned that if the blood pressure record in office is high and at home it is normal, it is white coat hypertension. And if the blood pressure record in office is normal and blood pressure record at home is high, it is called mask hypertension. So office, isolated clinic, white coat hypertension. So white coat hypertension, sustained hypertension, mask hypertension, or normotension can be easily identified by taking a blood pressure record in clinic and ambulatory blood pressure recording. So this is the indications mainly in white coat hypertension, grade 1 hypertension in office, suspicion of mask hypertension, then white coat effect in hypertensive patient, then diurnal fluctuations, any postural hypotension, suspected preeclampsia. Also home blood pressure monitoring and ambulatory blood pressure monitoring may be helpful to find out a true or false resistant hypertension, etc. will be very helpful. So in all these conditions, home blood pressure monitoring or ambulatory blood pressure monitoring is very helpful. This is a comparison between ambulatory home blood pressure monitoring and office blood pressure monitoring. If we go directly, that ambulatory blood pressure monitoring will be for 24 hours. Home blood pressure monitoring will be only during daytime. It will not record during night time, and clinic will be only when you attend the clinic, either in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening. This will give you entire intraday blood pressure fluctuation. This will give only day-to-day fluctuation, not intraday. And this will be giving you only visit to visit. So these two are very important difference between all the two. Hence, ambulatory blood pressure monitoring is much better. It is the best because it gives you a nighttime hypertension which you can detect. So this will help to identify mask hypertension. This will help to identify white coat hypertension. And this is most complete and will give you a guidance regarding 24-hour control. While this is better than office blood pressure monitoring. Office blood pressure monitoring is very poor because it gives you only one reading at the time of attending the office. So ambulatory blood pressure monitoring will improve the compliance. Home blood pressure monitoring will also improve the compliance. But this will hardly have improvement as far as the compliance is concerned. No influence on compliance. So do keep this thing in mind. This is what can be detected by ambulatory. We call deeper surge, early morning surge and deeper. You can be detecting them by ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. And depending upon the ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, home blood pressure monitoring, different stages are being given. At your leisure time you can go through. We'll be discussing in detail when we discuss a chapter of hypertension. These are the 4 stages, that is normotensive. Then there is what we call as pre-hypertensive. Then stage 1, stage 2 hypertension. This is stage 1, stage 2. Sorry, this should be pre-hypertensive. This will be stage 1. This will be stage 1. Sorry, there is a typing mistake. And 160/100, more than 160/100 is stage 2. And this will be home blood pressure. This is a daytime ambulatory. This is a nighttime ambulatory. And this is 24 over average. So you can see the difference. Normotensive range is different. And prehypertensive 125/75 is taken as prehypertensive, and stage 1 will be 130/80, which is considered as normal, or we consider that as a prehypertensive, and 140/90, which is considered as stage 1, will be almost going for stage 2 in ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. So ambulatory blood pressure monitoring gives you much better results. This is again a similar thing which gives you systolic and diastolic in office, ambulatory, daytime, nighttime, average, and home blood pressure monitoring. What we have mentioned here in a horizontal difference, this is a vertical. Now what is hypertension? Persistent elevation of resting arterial blood pressure recording more than 140/90 at 3 separate occasions. We'll call that as hypertension. There are some terminology we call primary if the etiology is not known. If etiology is known, we call that as secondary. If on treatment and person is taking regularly, still blood pressure is not coming under control, we call that as resistant hypertension. And by and large, we use a term, one of the drug has to be diuretic, and minimum 3 drugs are utilized, then we label that as resistance hypertension. If only isolated systolic hypertension, means if only systolic is elevated, diastolic is normal, it is called ISH, is isolated systolic hypertension. If only diastolic is elevated, systolic is normal, say systolic is 130 and diastolic is 90, it is IDP. Systolic is say 200, diastolic is 70, isolated systolic hypertension. And when both are elevated, systolic, diastolic hypertension, usually this term we don't utilize, we call only hypertension. There is one terminology we call as hypertensive crisis. Probably I will be uploading one lecture on hypertensive crisis because it is very important for interns and the person who are practicing, and that includes urgency and emergency. At present, I am just giving you idea. In urgency, a blood pressure is elevated, systolic more than 180, diastolic more than 120, but there is no active, progressive, terminal organ damages. Indirectly, we call person is asymptomatic. Then we call that as the urgency. And if a person has got active, persistent, progressive, terminal organ damage. And what are the terminal organs? Heart, brain, kidney. If these organs are showing you any symptoms and signs of damage, it is called emergency. The blood pressure remains same, more than 180 systolic, diastolic more than 120. There is something called as a mask hypertension, we already mentioned. If the blood pressure record at the home is high and at the clinic is normal, we call it a mask hypertension. And white coat means opposite of that. If the blood pressure record at clinic is high and at home record is normal, we call white coat hypertension. And when mask hypertension is uncontrolled, mask hypertension uncontrolled, we call that as a MUCH. These are some of the terms which were being utilized now. These are not utilized nowadays. If the BP fluctuation in a day, majority of the records are normal, occasional records are high, during day and night, we call that as labile. If all records, almost we call 100% records are same, say 140/90, 140/90, 140/90, then we call that as stable. If there is a fluctuation in those blood pressure recording, but all blood pressure records are high, we call that as the unstable. But if the blood pressure record is gradually increasing, we call accelerated. And if the blood pressure record goes to a level of more than 200, 220, 240 and diastolic more than 140, previously it was called as a malignant hypertension. Now that terminology is replaced by hypertensive crisis. There is something called as a pseudo. We'll be showing you one slide on pseudo, where person is ideally not hypertensive, but you label that person as hypertensive because of instrumental error or technology error or because of atherosclerosis in an artery, etc. So when it is pseudo, you know that it is true. So person is genuinely hypertensive. There is something, a one word utilized, apparent, usually that is not commonly utilized. We already told you pre-hypertensive or elevated blood pressure, that is 130/80. Grade 1 is 140/90 and more than 160/100 is called grade 2. We have already told you systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure and mean arterial pressure. We have already mentioned before. There are one terminology we call as a problematic hypertension. One is resistant hypertension. Hypertensive crisis we already mentioned, that is emergency and urgency. Then secondary hypertension, these are all what we call is a difficult to control and sometimes you find problems. You should identify and treat them. Renovascular hypertension, pheochromocytoma to detect eclampsia, labile hypertension, difficult to treat, white coat hypertension, difficult to diagnose and difficult to treat because the person anxiety has to be reduced. There is also mask hypertension, difficult to diagnose and difficult to treat. There is one syndrome which is common in pregnancy. During pregnancy we call as a HELP and there is we call as eclampsia. We already told you mask uncontrolled hypertension, that is much. Pseudo resistant hypertension, this also you should keep it in mind. And pseudo hypertension. Now whenever you want to evaluate any person for hypertension, these are the criteria we have already mentioned: normal, pre-hypertensive, stage 1, stage 2. By taking a record, you should be able to put them into any one of these group. And then you go for a workup to find out whether it is primary or secondary. And also in primary, try to find out the risk factors like obesity, dyslipidemia, diabetes mellitus, smoking, exercise, anxiety, age. Then GFR, look at the GFR, microalbuminuria, family history, all those, these are the risk factor for cardiovascular disease. You should identify. Also assess for some of the conditions which are very odd like sleep apnea, because obstructive sleep apnea will be difficult to control. Then we call drug induced hypertension, very commonly steroids and NSAID, do keep that thing in mind. Then CKD, always try to rule out CKD. Then renovascular hypertension you should also try to identify because they are treatable conditions. Certain CKD may not be treatable, but detection will give a better life. Cushing syndrome, pheochromocytoma, gestational, etc. Thyroid disorders, you should try to identify all these causes. So this is an blood pressure recording, little idea regarding some of the terminology which are utilized in case of blood pressure recordings and hypertension. I've just covered up those particular part. Rest of the thing will be covering up in a chapter of hypertension and during your internship. That is a part of a treatment part. I'm not going to discuss regarding those particular chapter at present. So I feel that this lecture will be very helpful to you when you take a blood pressure in your parents, in your family member, when you are attending internship or you are going to some clinic or when you start your private practice. I hope this lecture will be very helpful to you. If you feel this lecture is helpful to you and you like this lecture, please press button like, subscribe, press bell icon, and you can share with your friends.